This is the story of Luis, an ordinary man, a father, a husband, a worker like so many others who crossed not just a land border, but a border of dreams. Luis left Brazil with a backpack on his shoulders, 400 reais in his pocket, and a huge fear in his heart. He believed that on the other side of the desert was the future his family deserved. He survived the scorching heat, the coyotes, the loneliness, and the cruel silence of the desert. But what awaited him in the United States wasn't exactly paradise. It was struggle, it was pain, it was invisibility. Still he fought. For 18 years he built everything: work, respect, a home, a family, and lost it all. In just one day. This is the story of Luis, and it could be the story of many others, told by no one. Luis crossed the border on foot. 3 days and 3 nights in the desert. 3 days of suffocating heat during the day and cutting cold at night. He slept among rocks, hiding from helicopters, with one eye open and the other dreaming of a better future. He walked beside strangers. Some gave up halfway. Others were left behind, swallowed by sand, fear, or exhaustion. Luis kept going. When he finally stepped on American soil, his heart was pounding like it was going to explode. It wasn't joy, it was relief. But the fear was still there. He arrived in Los Angeles hidden in the bed of a truck. Got out on a random street, feet swollen, clothes filthy, but his soul a little lighter. He didn't speak English, he didn't know anyone. Slept 2 nights on the street, eating dry bread and bottled water. On the 3rd day, he got a job in construction. They paid little in cash, no questions asked. The work was hard, started at 5 a.m. Luis barely understood the orders, but he said yes to everything. He carried cement, cut wood, endured insults in silence. At night, he cried on the phone. To his wife, who was still in Brazil, he promised, "It's just the beginning, it'll get better. I'm going to bring you here." And so the first few months went by. Lonely, painful, uncertain. But Luis never thought about giving up. He had no choice. Time went on. 6 months. Later, Luis could understand directions at work. A year later, he could get by with basic English: work, pay, family. Short words, but they meant a lot. He rented a small room with other immigrants. They shared everything: rent, food, fears. On Sundays, he went to church, not so much for faith, but to hear Portuguese, to remember there was a world where he had a name and wasn't just another number. 2 years later, he finally brought his wife and young son. He cried when he saw them coming out of the terminal. Long, silent hugs. In that moment, for the first time, he felt like maybe he belonged. With help from a Mexican boss who sympathized with his story, Luis started working directly with clients. He began earning more, opened a bank account, bought a used car, then financed a modest little house in the outskirts of Fresno. His wife, Anna, started babysitting during the day. His son, Matthias, started school. He had an accent, but learned quickly. Little by little, Luis stopped just surviving. He started living. He spent weekends barbecuing with neighbors, decorated the house for Halloween, got emotional at Christmas, watching his son ask Santa for presents in English. He laughed, but cried in secret, because even surrounded by achievements, Luis knew, at any moment, everything could end. But he didn't dwell on it. He was proud of what he had built, proud of waking up early, paying the bills, watching his son grow up, in a safe place. For 18 years, he was more American than many who were born there, but the documents, yes, were still the same. And in a country where paper is worth more than a story, that would come at a cost. It was a morning, like any other. Luis woke up at 5:15 like he had for nearly 2 decades, drank his coffee in silence, kissed Anna on the forehead and left for work. Matthias was still asleep. On the way, the radio played something in Spanish. Luis didn't understand it all, but he liked the music. He drove slowly, always slowly. He knew that for someone like him, a simple red light could turn into a sentence. But that day, a police officer pulled him over for a broken taillight. Luis handed over his California driver's license, one of those temporary ones that don't prove immigration status. The officer looked suspiciously, asked for other documents. Luis stuttered, said he didn't have any. They called another patrol car, then a third. Neighbors began stopping to watch. Luis was shaking, cold sweat. He tried to explain, said he was a worker, had lived there for 18 years, it didn't matter. He was taken away in handcuffs under curious stares, as if he were a criminal. At the station, he stayed silent. He called Anna and said just one sentence. They got me. The next day, they told him he was being investigated for unlawful presence, and to make things worse, someone had filed an anonymous tip weeks earlier. They said he would be transferred to an immigration detention center. Anna tried to hire a lawyer, chased signatures, letters from the community, even from the church pastor. But nothing seemed to be enough. Luis had no criminal record, paid taxes, worked with a registered employer, even with weak documents. But to the system, he was just another number. Luis spent 62 days in an immigration detention center, a cold, noisy place, no windows, where time stood still and the silence hurt more than the noise. He slept poorly, ate little, thought a lot. He received letters from Anna and Mateus, letters with drawings, promises, prayers. But deep down, his heart already knew what was coming. The 63rd day, he was called into a courtroom, a serious judge, quick, direct. The public defender tried to argue, said Luis had a fixed address, a family, posed no risk. But the system wasn't there to hear stories. It was there to enforce rules. Your deportation order is confirmed. You will be removed to Brazil within 10 days. Luis felt the ground disappear, not because he feared going back, but because of everything he'd have to leave behind. On deportation day, Anna and Mateus were allowed 20 minutes with him. A glass separated them. Mateus cried, confused. Anna tried to smile to hide her despair. Luis just apologized, told Mateus to study, told Anna not to let the house fall apart. Then he was taken straight to the airport, handcuffed alongside 8 other deportees. When he arrived in Brazil, no one was there to meet him. His mother had passed away. His friends were far. He landed in a country where he was born, but no longer. Felt he belonged. He was 47 years old, with nothing, no direction, and most of all, without his family. Luis now lives in a small town in rural Brazil. He shares a back room in a distant cousin's house, takes odd construction jobs, lives with little. Sometimes there's not even rice in the cupboard. But what he misses most is presence. The presence of his son, who now speaks English better than Portuguese. The presence of his wife, who stayed in the US, trying to keep everything going, for him, for Mateus, for dignity. They talk over video calls, but it's not the same. It never will be. Luis avoids going out much. He's ashamed to explain what happened. Ashamed to say he came back, when in truth he never wanted to return. On a quiet afternoon, sitting in a plastic chair, staring at the grey sky, he says, "I did everything right, except be born in the right place. I was honest. I worked hard. I was a father. And still I was treated like an invader. I lost everything in one day. But what hurts the most is that no one seemed to care. Luis is not an isolated case. He's just one of millions. People who helped build homes, care for children, serve coffee, clean hospitals, and in the end were discarded, simply for not having a piece of paper. How many stories like Luis's go untold every day? How many others it will never be heard?